Question 2.9. Can FDR's tactics for bringing America out of the Great Depression be seen as a marked departure from the policies of Harding, Coolidge, and Hoover? I'm Josh May. Robert Nichols will be joining us shortly. Let's dive right into it. Some quick background information on the four presidents in question. Harding served from 1921 to 23, Coolidge served from 23 to 29, Hoover served from 29 to 33, and FDR served from 33 to 45. It's also important to note that the Great Depression started under Hoover's terms, or under Hoover's term, and it continued throughout FDR's terms. And it didn't really resolve until after World War II. So in a basic sense, yes. If you boil it down, FDR is liberal with the budget. He opts for government spending to stimulate and boost the economy, especially during the Depression, whereas Harding, Coolidge, and Hoover were all conservative budgeteers who advocated for limited constitutional government. So two main topics we're going to be going over in terms of the yes stance. The first being tariffs. So Harding, Coolidge, and Hoover all adopted a America First policy, whereas FDR supported lower tariffs and promoting international trade. So under the Forney-McCumber tariff, which was instituted by Harding and continued through Coolidge's term, they basically raised tariffs. And when the Great Depression first hit, Hoover's first response was the Harley-Smoot tariff, which raised tariffs drastically. And this is basically done so that, business will be centered more in America on American businesses to really promote American business. This is direct comparison to the Reciprocal Tariff Act of 1934, which was instituted under FDR's administration, and it basically granted the president the ability to negotiate lower tariffs with international countries to promote this international trade and international market. So both Hoover and FDR were trying to promote American business during the Great Depression. They just went about different ways of doing so. The second point being government regulation. So Harding, Coolidge, and Hoover were all pro-business, hands-off policy. It's a resurgence of laissez-faire. And FDR instituted new programs, including Social Security, SEC, FDIC. It's important to note that the Great Depression was partially caused by failing banks, and this resulted in a whole government and societal shift to realizing that these large organizations really did need regulation. Whereas Hoover did institute a trickle-down economics policy where the government gets involved and supports big businesses in the hopes that it would trickle down and to the rest of society. It's nowhere on the level of FDR's regulating programs and initiatives, which largely reformed the entire role of government and set the stage for what government does today. So on one hand, we have Harding, Coolidge, and Hoover, who were pro-business and kind of let business do run as they run themselves. And on the other hand, we have FDR, who carefully regulated businesses, audited them, made sure they were running at optimal performance, especially in the Great Depression, when wasted business would spell doom for an entire society.
All right. The other point of view on the question, can FDR's New Deal policies be seen as a departure from the policies of Harding, Hoover, and Coolidge? I think that it can be seen that no, they were not a departure. Although FDR's New Deal policies did increase in government involvement by a lot, it is important to note that policies in the Coolidge and Hoover administrations served as precursors. One of the areas you really see that the increased government involvement start to appear in the 1920s is with the government helping farmers. The farmers were struggling due to too many surpluses in the 1920s, so one of the first things that they enacted under Coolidge's administration was the McNary-Hogan Bill, which was done to keep high prices for agriculture by allowing for the government to buy surpluses and sell these surpluses abroad to foreign markets. And a policy enacted under Hoover to help out these farmers was the Agricultural Marketing Act, which created the Federal Farm Board with a $500 million budget to fund the buying, selling, and storing of surpluses. And it also encouraged farmers to organize. This supported labor unions I will bring up later. These can be compared to the Agricultural Adjustment Act, which was enacted under FDR's New Deal, which boosted agricultural prices by reducing surpluses. This time, instead of buying surpluses and such, the governments would buy the livestock and slaughter the livestock, and they would also pace up farmers to not actually plant more on their land so that there would be less surpluses to deal with. Where you really start to see massive similarities is when Hoover starts dealing with the Depression and FDR deals with the Depression. And one of the ways you can see that is in the Reconstruction Finance Corporation, which was a government lending bank for relief to insurance companies, banks, agricultural organizations, railroads, and state and local governments. The Reconstruction Finance Corporation was important in providing relief at the beginning of the Depression, and then FDR builds on that act, and with the relief of the banking system with the Emergency Banking Relief Act, it gave the president more power to regulate transactions, but it also gave the Secretary of the Treasury the power to determine if additional funds were needed from the Reconstruction Finance Corporation to help out banks. And lastly, one big way they are similar is in their treatment of labor. The Norris-LaGuardia Anti-Injection Act was passed under Hoover's administration. It outlawed yellow dog contracts that meant that a worker could not join a union, and it also made it so federal courts can't issue injunctions for strikes, boycotts, and peaceful picketing. This can be compared to FDR's policy, the National Labor Relations Act, which meant that businesses have to bargain in good faith with any union supported by the majority of their employees. Thank you.